So, I grew up as a tobacco farmer in Tobaccoville. When I was younger, my grandfather had come and stayed with us and started talking about my family history, which was pretty interesting because at that time I found out that my first grandfather was Adam Butner, who moved from Moravia, Pennsylvania with the original group of 11 to settle Bethabara. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah. So the first thing they did was build a bread oven and because if you can't have bread, you can't eat, you can't stay here. So they built a bread oven and then went on and started clearing land for crops. So whenever they figured out, they all cooked, and Adam was not the worst baker, so he ended up being, and I'm not going to say he was the best, but the others were not as good as he was.
Sure.
So he became the baker, and so he was baking the bread and everything. And then when they opened up Salem, obviously he was the most experienced baker, so he moved over to Salem as the original master baker.
Wow.
And then later on, he departed Salem, maybe not under his own desire, but
interesting.
He left Salem, and his son took over, Thomas. And Thomas Butner was the baker, the master baker in Old Salem, and actually built the Winklewood Bakery that is there now in 1799 and ran it until 1807. Then he moved up north. I can't remember where it's at right now, like somewhere in Pennsylvania. But then he came back and became the cobbler in town. And then my next grandfather was Thomas, and he was actually the blacksmith of Bethabara. Then we go to William Alexander, who basically just became a farmer, taking care of the land. They called them planters then.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't really farmers. Taking care of the land and doing a little pastoral stuff. And then, so basically every one of the sons from that point on was, Thomas, William Alexander, Jacob, Bynum Henry, Sidney Tobias,
wow.
Randall Wayne.
Yeah, you know him, man. That's great.
Yeah, it's
wow.
I can take you to every one of their grave sites except for Adam.
Oh wow.
Adam was buried in Rowan County, and that sounds far away, but it's kind of, if you go down Stratford toward Clemens, where Friedberg Church Road cuts off, the old Friedberg was on the other side, and there's a bunch of gravestones with the markers you can't read.
So it might have been limestone and it's washed away. Or...
Yeah, he's one of those.
Oh, wow.
And my first grandmother is in God's Acre over at Bethabara. She's the third from the center. Sarah Elrod.
So one of the first few.
Yeah, the dates between her birth and death are actually longer than the two in front of them. So,
well, that's good.
Yeah, she lived longer.
A little bit longer journey. So that's great. And so, what did your journey look like from tobacco farming?
Mm-hmm.
So I know it's a lot of different things in the way, but so you're a tobacco farmer in your youth, and then how long did you do that?
We lived on the farm in Tobaccoville for, I was probably 11 when we moved away.
Okay.
We quit farming, and so Dad built houses.
Okay.
And so basically, when summer break would come, everybody's like, "Oh, we're out of school." I'm like, "Oh, I got to go to work."
Yeah, great.
So so basically, I read, did my schoolwork all year, and then at the summertime, I drove nails all summer.
Yeah.
It was a lot of picking this pile of lumber up from here and moving it here so I can move it back here tomorrow. It's busy work. They loved busy work, but you didn't sit down unless you were taking a break or lunch. I mean, you never sat down.
Yeah.
And so I mean, it was definitely eventful. He had 7 brothers and 4 sisters, so there was 11 of them.
Wow.
And they all worked together. It was Butner Brothers Construction.
Oh, wow.
And Dad branched out on his own and actually called it Sure Hand Builders for a little while. So that was kind of neat. But we built mostly for R.J. Reynolds executives. We were on
Ooh, I'm sure those are some interesting pads.
They were very nice houses.
Yeah.
And we lived in it's like a 1,600 square foot house that my grandfather built.
Yeah.
They didn't build it for us, but my grandfather just happened to build it, and we just happened to live in it because they were carpenters, so they built houses all over the place. And the first house my grandfather built is actually on Renolda Road. But anyway, it's kind of neat because, when I'm riding around town, I'm like, I got to do this delivery, and I'll go deliver the food to this house. And I'm like, oh yeah, my dad did this, or, I did the trim work in this room, or,
wow.
So it's kind of interesting. And
so that was 11 to 18, 19? How long?
About 17. I decided that I wanted a new career. Because building houses
we tend to get that attitude around 17 too. We want to do something a little different.
Yeah, I liked welding, so I kind of went into welding, and I was doing different things with welding and doing. I worked for Tim Dabb in East Bend, and he did Unify. So it's anything from welding together handrails around a new machine, building creel stands for machines are coming. So it was a lot of repetitive work, and they kept saying commercial plumbing's where all the money is. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, I like money, so I got a job in plumbing.
Yeah.
And I started working for PF, and he was a real good guy. We worked together a long time, and I learned a ton from him. And basically, when anybody would go on vacation, he would take their spot and work in the field, and I would always go work with him because my dad and them trained me. When you get to work, you give 100% until you can't give any more, then you go home. So we.
And with somebody like you, with that energy that I got to observe on Wednesday, your energy probably goes from like 8 a.m. to like 1 a.m.
It can, yeah. It's whatever I need. I've been going at it since 8 this morning, and it's 8 tonight. So so I had to clean my car up for the wife to take to the beach. But anyway, so I did plumbing. I did a lot of buildings, downtown commercial buildings. Did most of the remodel on the Anagon building or the Flow building or whatever. I don't know what it's called now, but so it's the really pretty GMAC building.
Oh yeah.
It's 525 maybe.
Yeah. GMAC, and then of course it's like every 10 years somebody's new big banner is going to go on the front.
Right. That's exactly it. But so we did a lot of plumbing work around town, and I got better and did a lot of things, and as it went on, I got over into doing houses and loved doing houses. That was, you could just, when you're doing commercial work, everything is definitely laid out into a plan that you have to follow to the T.
Yeah.
Whenever you're doing residential work, you walk into this thing and you have a blank canvas and you get to put your pipe in however you want. I'm not a real big plan guy. I love just like seeing what's available and what it needs to do, and then going from there.
Resourceful.
Yeah. So it's.
Well, that's why we're in Mixer, right? That's
right.
You come here and you're like, I got an idea. I've got some things, but I need to be. What kind of resources you guys got? Oh, just about everything. Sweet. Yeah. So when I come here, I'll bring a bunch of wood and I'll start putting it together, and I'm like, okay, this needs to go like this, and basically how everything starts going together is how the end result will be. Yeah.
I don't have an idea what I'm doing when I start, but about halfway through, I know what it's going to look like when I finish.
Yeah. So. I agree with that. I was telling Maddie Carlson, who's going to be one of our other Dash City stories. She has a creative collective art startup that she's doing, and she was telling me about the art process of youth, where they get to the point where they may not get positive or negative feedback, and then they stop pursuing art. And I was like, I feel like I'm creative and not artistic. There's something in my brain, but somewhere along the line from my brain to my hand, it loses that image, and I can't quite translate. And so I usually like to shape things or tie in, like, hey, you're super artistic, maybe you don't have like this crazy imagery, but you're an amazing like sculptor or digital artist or whatever. Let's work together and build something beautiful. And
So that's my biggest problem is like I can envision anything,
Yeah.
but I can't put it on paper. That's it's like
Yeah.
it's
I'd rather just jump in and start making it.
my boss says, it's like you're the artist and we just like take your ideas and we make them like you need them because me putting into words what I'm going to do, it's like, I'm going to do this and it's going to be the greatest thing ever. And, it's like all of a sudden you're like, well, it doesn't sound that great. And then you go and you're like, oh, okay, this is, okay, yeah. So, I mean,
so let's talk about, that and how your artistic nature comes out through Caravas. And you told me a really interesting story of how you got started there. And that ties in from your exit from plumbing. And so it's definitely worth, I think, everybody to hear it. So would you please tell that story?
So, I was doing plumbing and it was 2009 and the market kind of
was on the way down.
It's
still going down.
It disappeared.
Yeah.
So I had a few contractors that, decided they weren't going to build houses anymore because they didn't have money. And, so I wasn't going to get paid either. So I told my wife, I'm like, let's just go somewhere and eat like a super nice meal. Don't know when we'll be able to do it again. I got a lot of debt that I got to pay off and, it's going to be a struggle and I don't know how long. Let's just go have a good time tonight and forget about everything. And, I was like, let's go somewhere I've never been. And at that point, I'd never been to Caravas. And so we ended up, getting my wife and, we always traveled with her cousin and one of her friends. So it was like always the four of us, So we went in and when we went in, they were very warm and welcome. I'm like, man, this is kind of cool. They're really nice. And they were busy, but, it's people just kept talking to me. Hey, how are you? And I'm kind of not a guy to avoid a conversation. So I love meeting people.
Yeah.
I've never met a stranger. But so we finally get to our seat and they, I'm country. And I'd never really been to that nice of a restaurant, so to speak. It's like I'll take steak and potato or a hot dog or, something like that. So Ashley actually went over the menu with me. Not that I couldn't understand what it was, but it's just a bunch of words on a piece of paper if you're not a foodie. I love food, but I love simple food. So, just that, and it was going through it, and then her husband or boyfriend at the time was actually the guy that cooked the food for me.
Oh, cool.
And so, that story came out, and they were talking about everything, and, the food came to the table, and I got the pasta wheezy, which is fettuccine alfredo with shrimp and mushrooms and lemon butter, and it's like still one of my favorite dishes, but it was amazing. As soon as I took my first bite, I looked at my wife and I'm like, if I was gonna have a restaurant, I'd like to own one like this. This is the one I want. And it's kind of funny, but it was like real short after it's like, hey, you're a pretty fun guy. How about, you ever thought about serving? I'm like, no. So then they talked me into getting a job there. And, the whole thing was the worst case scenario. They would have no leaks in their plumbing system if I was a horrible server.
Yeah.
So that, I kind of did the Caravas thing at night and still did plumbing during the day.
Okay.
So I'd get up.
So plumbing was sort of on the way out because you didn't have contractors anymore, but you needed something because you had debt from materials that you purchased and things that you prepped for jobs that then all of a sudden fell out.
Well, I had not all of my contractors went away.
Yeah.
So I had a couple that I continued to do work for. So I'd get up at like 6 a.m. and go work until my shift would. It's like, oh, I got to drive home, take a shower, and get to work.
Right.
To Caravas, and then I'd close. So I'd get out of there around 11 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
So my days were pretty much 6 to 11.
6 to 11, 6 to 11.
So
Sure.
it's no big deal. And
gotta do what you gotta do.
So I worked there as a server for about 6 months, and then they promoted me to a bartender. and then like 3 months later, they promoted me to a key manager. So in about 2 times, going from never working in a restaurant, I mean, I plumbed a ton of them.
Yeah.
But, you know, as far as the front service side of it, I'd never done that. And, you know, then I was being promoted, like in, you know.
It's about 13, 14 months. You went from 6 months serving, 3 months, and then another 6 months you were.
Yeah, it was right at 2 years exactly when I got promoted, because they were talking about it. And so you get promoted, and then there's this like long wait until they have a need, and then you get moved into the training. Yeah. So then I trained for 3 months. So I went from January to March, you know, learning everything in the kitchen. And
oh yeah.
Yeah, that was.
If you're gonna run the show, you got to know how all the pieces come together.
Yes, you make everything in the building until you can make it without the recipe.
Right.
And I mean, our prep is like super labor intensive. So I spent a month just learning how to prep the sauces and, you know, everything that we do. And I mean, it was kind of funny because the guy that promoted me was like, you know, it's going to be 55 hours a week. I don't know if you're ready for that or not. I'm like, dude, I'm ready for a break. That'll be awesome. You know,
yeah. The 55, man, that'll cut 40 hours out of my.
That's super
schedule.
nice. So, you know, I did the management thing. I moved to, well, I didn't move. My house, the funny thing is I bought my house before I ever worked at Caravas. And it was 19 minutes from the one in Winston, 20 minutes from the one that I worked at in Greensboro, and like 22 minutes from the other one in Greensboro.
Oh, okay.
So I was like in the perfect spot.
Oh, nice. So you bounced around between the 3 different Caravas?
I did. I went to work with Wanda, who was basically, you know, teaching me everything I needed to know about running a restaurant. So I went to work with her and in Greensboro for a little while, like 2.5 years, and then I went back to Winston. Wow. And then I went back to Greensboro for 3 months, and you know, so that was like a, let's see, I've been 5, that was like a 3-4 year span.
Wow.
And then like in November of 2015, my boss come up and said, hey, you know, Winston-Salem's opening, and I know that you wanted to be the partner there, so are you ready to take it over? And I'm like, you drove down here for that? Yeah. It's like, dude, that could have been a phone call. I'd have told you, yeah.
Yeah. So from 2009, and then you start 0 experience to you're a proprietor of Caravas in 2015.
Yes.
That's not a very long timeline. But, like, it could be if you're like, hey, in 6 years, you could have the opportunity to run your own store.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, was that always like, was that on your horizon? You're like, I would love to run one of these. And so you were like, that's my horizon. So was any part of that journey like ever difficult, or you're just like, you just enjoyed it in the moment throughout that process?
So I'd never had a public job. So like all my life, I basically worked for my dad, did construction, you know, just kept doing all that. So dealing with the public, I never did it.
Yeah.
So it's like, I realize I get to talk to everybody, and basically, you know, my kitchen's so awesome that they run themselves, and my servers take care of everybody. So basically, I get paid to walk around and talk to people all night.
Yeah, well, for you, it probably feels like that, and that may be how you're positioning, but you spent 5 years in the trenches, like really learning all the nuts and bolts. So I'm sure for you now to walk through your show, your experience that you and your staff are providing, if you were to ever feel like there's a void, you would flawlessly like go in and like cover the void and nobody would know.
Yes.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah. It's that, and I mean, that's something you learn as a manager.
Yeah.
Because like if you have a good partner, like my job is to basically teach my managers to do what I do so I can just talk to the tables.
Yeah.
So, you know, whenever there's something going on.
You're a firefighter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm the guy on the truck telling everybody what to do. But it's whenever something's going on, you know, whoever I think needs to address it,
Yeah.
I'll go over and I'll say, hey, Sam, how about, you know, do you see that? And then later on that night, I'll explain how it came up and whether she did the right thing to correct it or not and what she could have done better.
Yeah.
It's like, no, you're messing it up, you know, because you have to learn.
Yeah.
You have
It's
to
the
learn.
nudge, right?
Yeah.
You're like, is that a good thing or a bad thing? Like, hey, I just noticed a thing.
Yeah.
Is that good or bad? Yeah, and then let them handle it, and then do a mission assessment after the fact, right?
Yeah.
Let it play out. Yeah, and then I always looked at. So I worked in food and beverage for a little bit in high school and college, and then I spent a lot of time in endurance event production, and so the show is happening. Customers are coming in, runners are coming, people are coming in. They're in the environment. If something goes wrong, it's like managers or leaders' position to be like the eye of the storm. Like when I move in, everything's calm, even though
Yeah.
like you and me, we're locked in the eye.
Right.
The whole world is spinning and could be tearing up outside, but we've got to keep it I got to bring you back down to my environment. And so, yeah, I can relate to that.
If you panic, everything's gone.
Oh, yeah. If you panic,
Gone.
if a leader panics, then you lose everybody.
It's gone.
The whole chain.
Yeah. There's nothing you can do to save it. It's
Yeah.
just, it's gone. So, I mean, yeah, you've got to stay.
And so does that mean you guys had, you had 5 years of training, but does that mean you guys have like a lot of training even then, like before store opens? Is there like little things you guys touch on for training?
We constantly, you know, do training. We have meetings once a month to go over. We do one-on-ones with you know, our superiors. So I mean, it's constant training. It's you're always preparing for the next thing. But you know, the funny part is when I became a partner, I thought I knew everything. You know, it's like, oh, I'm senior manager. I'm good. I've got this. This is nothing. My first day, and I'm like, oh wow. So you know, it's I basically went back to the principles and beliefs of Caravas, and you know what they go through, and just kind of followed that for the first year, fumbling around blindly, figuring out where I was at. And I mean, you know, I know that sounds crazy, but I'd been doing the job.
Yeah.
Kinda. I'd been doing the job, and it's like I always had Wanda or Kirk there saying, all right, look, next time you want to do
You'd been
this.
keeping up with the job.
Yeah. I was under somebody's wing.
Sure.
And now I have people that I have to
Right.
take care
Bring
of and
along.
make sure.
So do you have somebody now that, or like, I'm sure you have folks now that are then like next man up that you're guiding through to be potentially in a position like yours at a different store?
Yeah, you want 2 or 3 replacements.
Yeah.
And I mean, I know that sounds weird, strange,
Yeah.
but you never know when people are going to burn out.
Sure.
You want to try and keep them from burning out.
Of course.
And, you know, luckily I can just take a day off. I got this, no big deal.
Yeah.
You know, but
So managing culture is, I think you were saying in the mission statements of Caravas, like managing culture and people, like is like requirements 1 through 49, and number 50 was business.
yeah,
Right.
sales and profits.
Yeah.
Like it's a very thick. The P&B's is a very thick book, and I mean it's Johnny Carava and Daniel Mendola, just basically how to be a good person.
Yeah.
That's, you know, how to take care of your neighbors, you know, concentrated service, you know, it's like hospitality, you know, it's just all these things is how to be a good person. So, you know, they go through all of this, and, you know, it's like people are the most important thing. You know, if you take care of your people, this will work. And if your people need this, you know, be there for them. And then at the end of the thing, it's like, if you take care of your people properly, your sales and profits will be where they need to be.
Sure.
You know, so it's like, and I mean, you know, it's just
people, community. So that makes a lot of sense. And so how does that bleed into, or lead up to your future and Caravas' future, if you're, and we talked about a little bit the other night, So what's your vision of how the success of Caravas and yourself and your team, how do you plan, like what does the future look like for you and your business and, you know, profits or whatever, right? Your success, like how do you plan on managing your success?
You know, just being a pillar in the community, taking care of the people that need it. You know, it's not, whenever we do things, like you went with me to the ER, and I mean, that was, somebody said something positive that I thought was awesome, and I'm like, hey, you work at the ER. That's cool. I haven't fed y'all.
Yeah.
You know, and they're like, what do you mean? And it's kind of funny because, you know, whenever you say, I want to feed you, people automatically think, how much is this going to cost?
Yeah.
Well, if I want to feed you, I'm not worried about that. You know, I want to feed you because you are a selfless person. You are doing good for the community. You are, you know, I want to celebrate you.
Yeah.
You know, that's all it boils down to. It's not like there's nobody telling me to do this or, you know, anything like that. It's, you are a good person. You're doing a good deed. I want to help you out. You know.
And because of the success you've had and the training and that 5 or 6 short, long years, however somebody might view that perspective timeline, now you're in a position where you can take care of the community.
Yes.
That's incredible.
And that's all a learning process.
Yeah.
You know, because we do a lot in Winston-Salem. I hate to say that, but we do, my predecessors did not do, I didn't do as many events and, you know, food drops and things like that in the 6 years that I was with Caravas. We did them, but I'll do more in a year than I did in those 5 or 6. You know, my first year, no, because I was figuring everything out.
Yeah.
And I really didn't know, I knew what Caravas was, but I didn't know how.
Right.
You know, I didn't know what I could do, what I could, you know. And, you know, the thing about it is, as long as I have, you know, a reason that they're good people and, you know, we want to be part of the community.
Right.
We, you know, it's, our ideal is to be like a seamless part. We want to be like a local restaurant. Mm-hmm. And I mean, you know, obviously the guy calling all the shots, you know, I mean, my family's been here since 1752. So,
yeah,
you know, it's
that was really interesting. I mean, when you told me my family's been here since 1752 and I'm 9th generation from Winston-Salem, I was like, what? Like you were probably, your family was one of the first, however, you know, 11 that got here. Like that's incredible.
It's kind of cool.
That's super cool. And so, as I like to say, everybody's why is the same or should be the same, or why we do or why we want to do what we do is to help people.
Yes.
And you've found your what, which is the vehicle to help people. Yeah. And so you found your what, which is in the restaurant, and you're able to feed people who are in need or have given back to the community, or their mission. You know, you're helping level up their mission, which is incredible.
Right.
And so, and you just envision that what continuing on?
Well, it's kind of funny because, you know, like I said, I never draw plans or anything, and so, you know, on occasion I'll just get another idea that's like, oh man, you know, this is good, but you know,
like making a table. Yeah. You're like, oh, I can help somebody out by working with my hands and make a table.
Right. You know, here you go. But you know, it's the way that I know there's a lot of people in town that's doing some pretty solid things. Yeah. And they're all doing them solo. So, you know, I mean, there's a lot of people that I actually look up to in this town and what they're giving, and, you know, how selfless they are and how they go through everything. And I mean, it impresses me. Yeah. And I think that somebody needs to get them together.
Yeah, interesting.
Because, you know, the thing about it is, I can do this guy can do that, this guy can do that, you know, this lady can do that, you know, just all these people can do, you know, these little things.
Yeah.
Well, what if we did one or two things together? how many, it's like, if it needs this much money to be done and there's 3 of us working at it and we spent twice as much money, but
Probably going to have more than twice the impact.
Well,
right?
well, I'm just like, if we did it solo,
Sure.
and we all spent right at how much money that it needed to be done, but none of us got it done because we didn't know that we could have just paired together
Right.
and got it. So,
Yeah, that makes sense.
You follow?
Faster alone, further together.
Yes.
Right. And so while you see some of these efforts that people are trying to attack solo, and you were talking about Mayor Alan Jones previously. So you've had a chance to connect with him and hear some of his long-term vision for the town and the way he's trying to pull different communities in, especially to help the communities who are being left out.
Right.
Right. And so it sounds like one of your biggest missions now, or what you would like to see happen now, is a way to get some of these individuals who are moving fast and doing big things. But if we can get 3 or 4 or 5 of these folks to then pull together,
Yes.
and connect, right? And so I think that might have been maybe the mission of Venture Cafe when that was around.
Right.
Now it's called Agile City. I'm not sure of their current mission.
Yeah.
Might be similar, but yeah, interesting.
Whenever you have things, and I mean, they're great.
Yeah.
They do a lot of good things. But I think whenever you have things where you have rules, restrictions, Caravas gives me the benefit of, I see this, I want to do this, it's done.
Yeah.
I have to answer. I have, a sheet that
there's a justification.
there's a process.
And they probably trust you that you're not just going to
Yes.
willy-nilly give away.
Right. There's a certain process and a whole lot of things that goes into the thought of it. But I mean, at the end of the day, will it benefit the community?
Right.
And, so that's the biggest question that you have to answer. But, whenever you have, the more rules you have, the more hoops you have to jump through, some of these things are time sensitive.
Yeah.
I think, one of the things that's important to me is like, the poverty. I don't like to see it.
Yeah.
I grew up on a farm. We ate really good.
Yeah.
But as far as, we didn't have a lot of money.
Right.
But, we had cattle, we had pigs, we had gardens.
Access.
Yeah.
Sure.
We had access to things. And, a lot of the people that live in the city don't have that access.
Food deserts.
Yeah. And, I mean, there's various things that I think we could do to benefit that. And, the saying is, you're only as strong as your weakest link.
Right.
So if we can get, and they're not our weakest link, but that's just a saying. If we can get, the poverty level up, it'll benefit everyone.
Oh, for sure.
And I mean, it's like, it's not going to take away from anybody that lives in a castle in town, but it'll bring more people here. It'll bring more money in. It'll bring, and I mean, it'll make the town, and in my opinion, it'll make the town match my opinion, which it's the greatest town in the world. I mean, there's only one Winston-Salem. You don't have to put North Carolina after it because there's not another one.
That's a great point.
So, and
Yeah.
the really cool thing is Winston-Salem was joined May 9th, 1913. I was born May 9th, 1973. So we share a birthday.
Oh, wow.
It's kind of cool.
Yeah, that is, yeah, you're deep, like your roots run super deep in Winston-Salem. All right, so my takeaway from all this is, so your mission is to bring together all these individuals who solo are moving hard and fast to try to help communities that are without. And so through these Dash City stories, hopefully I can have some more sessions with these individuals. So if you're out there and you'd like to tell your story, we would love to help you tell your story and amplify your message and your mission. And so, I don't see any reason why we can't be like the Avengers here and start to assemble some of these superheroes that might be operating in their own lane and individually what the value they bring and the mission that they're on or the services they provide. Let's focus on what we do best, but then together collectively, I think we will make a big impact here in Winston-Salem. So I'm really looking forward to that.
We absolutely will.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Daniel. I couldn't thank you enough for being the second, maybe our third guest. We'll see how these things come out for our Dash City Stories session. And so if folks want to get a hold of you or through Caravas, how do they do that?
Come see me at Caravas.
Just come see you at Caravas.
Yeah.
Okay, Daniel Butner, proprietor of Caravas Grill here in Winston-Salem. And we'll stop by and get some food sometime.
Perfect. Thank you.